I'm Sophie, and I'm getting baptized this morning because God has proven time and time again that even when I don't see it, He is there for me. So the easiest way for me to tell my faith story, I've discovered, is through a poem, and I actually love poetry, so for me to say this is my favorite poem, it actually means something. Footprints in the Sand. So if you don't know it, basically the explanation of it is you're walking along the beach with Jesus, and your life is playing out over the sky, and as you look back, you can see two sets of footprints, yours and Jesus's. And when you look up at the sky and you see, different parts of your life, you notice in all the hard times, there was only one set of footprints. And you look at God and you're like, how come when there were challenges, why did you abandon me? And Jesus says, I didn't abandon you, I carried you. My whole life, I could feel God holding my hand. I could see those two sets of footprints. Sometimes God would be dragging me, and sometimes I'd be dragging Him, and but I could always feel His hand, and I thought my faith was strong. But if faith is believing in something you can't see, how could I call what I had faith when I could always see God? It wasn't until I changed schools in grade 9 that I didn't see God for the first time. And because of this, I found myself looking for my worth in places that were unstable. My grades, which weren't what they had been because of a new environment and new challenges and new expectations. And volleyball. Volleyball was the only place I could let myself breathe. It was like I was holding my breath until I got on the court. It became my everything, the reason I would wake up, and at one point, the only reason I wanted to live. And then COVID hit, and I went numb. I didn't feel anything for a year, and for someone who has spent their whole life feeling everything 100 times more intensely than the next person, to feel nothing suddenly was the most terrifying thing I'd ever experienced. And because of this, I turned to other ways to feel, which were not always beneficial. But it was all I could do to remind myself that I was human. I had no motivation to do anything. I had lost the one thing that brought me joy in life, and I would lay awake at 4 a.m. and pray, God, if you're really there, don't let me wake up tomorrow. But every day I did, and every day I felt myself fading further and further from God and from life. I spent 2 years in this darkness, and no one noticed. I felt completely isolated and alone, and every time I did open up, I got the same response. Everyone feels like this. You're not alone. Imagine the people who felt like this before COVID hit. You're not special, it's all in your head. And so I thought there was something wrong with me. I thought I was the problem. And when I finally did find a way to open up, we tried everything. I saw therapists, counselors, psychologists, and nothing seemed to help. And right when I was beginning to think that it really was just me, we went to a nurse's office. And we had been at my doctor a few weeks before, and she was upping my dose again and again. And she said, you know what, I'll make some calls as a last resort. And I shared my story to this nurse, expecting the same response as always. But within 5 minutes of me opening up, she pulled a book off the shelf, started to read a list of traits, and then looks at me and goes, does this sound like you? And I was like, yeah. And for the first time in 2 years, I felt heard and I felt understood. It was like I could feel God's hand in mine again. That was a year ago, and it hasn't always been easy. In fact, it has been incredibly hard. It has been a year of intense therapy and a year of putting myself deliberately into uncomfortable situations so that when they come up uncalled for, unexpected, I'm prepared for them. But I know that every time I can't feel God's hand, it's because He's carrying me. And it gives me the opportunity to strengthen my faith and choose to believe that He's still there. I'm here because God carried me, even when I had almost lost my faith entirely, and I couldn't be more excited to dedicate the rest of my life to following Him.
And earth has quaked before, moved by the sound of his voice. Seas that are shaken and stirred can be calmed and broken for my regard. Through it all, my eyes are on you. And through it all, it is well. Through it all, my eyes are on you, and it is well with me. Far be it from me to not believe, even when my eyes can't